Hello everyone, it's me Uncle John. Today I am going to read Essex 1698, Charlotte's Web. Chapter 4, Loneliness. The next day was rainy and dark. Rain fell on the roof of the barn and dripped steadily from the eaves. Rain fell in the barnyard and ran in crooked courses down into the lane, where thistles and pigweed grew. Rain spattered against Mrs. Juckerman's kitchen windows and came gushing out of the spouts. Rain fell on the backs of the sheep as they grazed in the meadow. When the sheep tired of standing in the rain, they walked slowly up the lane and into the fold. Rain upset Wilbur's plan. Wilbur had planned to go out this day and dig a new hole in his yard. He had other plans too. His plans for the day went something like this. Breakfast at 6:30. Skim milk, crust, middlings, bits of donut, wheat cakes with drops of maple syrup sticking to them, potato skins, leftover custard pudding with raisins and bits of shredded wheat. Breakfast would be finished at 7. From 7 to 8, Wilbur planned to have a talk with Templeton, the rat that lived under his trough. Talking with Templeton was not the most interesting occupation in the world, but it was better than nothing. From 8 to 9, Wilbur planned to take a nap outdoors in the sun. From 9 to 11, he planned to dig a hole or trench and possibly find something good to eat buried in the dirt. From 11 to 12, he planned to stand still and watch flies on the boards, watch bees in the clover, and watch swallows in the air. 12 o'clock, lunchtime, middlings, warm water, apple parings, meat gravy, carrot scrapings, meat scraps, stale hominy, and the wrapper of a package of cheese. Lunch would be over at 1. From 1 to 2, Wilbur planned to sleep. From 2 to 3, he planned to scratch itchy places by rubbing against the fence. From 3 to 4, he planned to stand perfectly still and think of what it was like to be alive and to wait for fun. At 4 would come supper, skim milk, provender leftover sandwich from Lurvy's lunchbox, prune skins, a morsel of this, a bit of that, fried potatoes, marmalade, drippings, a little more of this, a little more of that, a piece of baked apple, a scrap of upside down cake. Wilbur had gone to sleep thinking about these plans. He awoke at 6 and saw the rain, and it seemed as though he couldn't bear it. I get everything all beautifully planned out, and it has to go and rain, he said. For a while, he stood gloomily indoors. Then he walked to the door and looked out. Drops of rain struck his face. His yard was cold and wet. His trough had an inch of rainwater in it. Templeton was nowhere to be seen. "Are you out there, Templeton?" called Weaver. There was no answer. Suddenly, Wilbur felt lonely and friendless. One day, just like another, he groaned, "I am very young, have no real friend here in the barn. It's going to rain all morning and all afternoon, and fun won't come in such bad weather." Oh, honestly, and Wilbur was crying again for the second time in 2 days. At 6:30, Wilbur heard the banging of a pail. Lurvy was standing outside in the rain, stirring up breakfast. "Come on, Pig," said Lurvy. Wilbur did not budge. Lurvy dumped the slops, scraped the pail, walked away. He noticed that something was wrong with the pig. Wilbur didn't want food. He wanted love. He wanted a friend, someone who would play with him. He mentioned this to the goose. who was sitting quietly in a corner of the sheepfold. Will you come over and play with me? He asked. Sorry, sorry, sorry. I'm sitting on my eggs, 8 of them. Got to keep them toasty warm. I have to stay right here. I'm no liberty gibbet. I don't play when there are eggs to hatch. I'm expecting goslings. Well, I didn't think you were expecting woodpeckers, said Wilbur bitterly. Wilbur next tried one of the lambs. Will you please play with me? He asked. Certainly not, said the lamb. In the first place, I cannot get into your pen, as I am not old enough to jump over the fence. In the second place, I am not interested in pigs. Pigs mean less than nothing to me. What do you mean, less than nothing? Replied Wilbur. I don't think there is any such thing as less than nothing. Nothing is absolutely the limit of nothingness. It's the lowest you can go. It's the end of the line. How can something be less than nothing? If there was something that was less than nothing, then nothing wouldn't be nothing. It would be something, even though it's just a very little bit of something. If nothing is nothing, then nothing has nothing that is less than it is. Oh, be quiet, said the lamb. Go play by yourself. I don't play with pigs. Sadly, Wilbur lay down and listened to the rain. Soon he saw the rat climbing down a slanting board that he used as a stairway. Will you play with me? Templeton asked Wilbur. Play? Twirling his whiskers. I hardly know the meaning of the word. Well, it means to have fun, to frolic, to run and skip, and make merry. I never do those things if I can avoid them, replied the rat sourly. I prefer to spend my time eating, knowing, spying, and hiding. I'm a glutton, but not a merrymaker. Right now, I'm on my way to your trough to eat your breakfast, since you haven't got sense enough to eat it yourself. And Templeton, the rat, crept stealthily along the wall, disappeared into a private tunnel that he had dug between the door and the trough in Wilbur's yard. Templeton was a crafty rat, and he had things pretty much his own way. The tunnel was an example of his skill and cunning. The tunnel enabled him to get from the barn to his hiding place under the pig trough without coming out into the open. He had tunnels and runways all over Mr. Zuckerman's farm and could get from one place to another without being seen. Usually he slept during the daytime and was abroad only after dark. Wilbur watched him disappear into his tunnel. In a moment, he saw the rat's sharp nose poke out from underneath the wooden trough. Cautiously, Templeton pulled himself up over the edge of the trough. This was almost more than Wilbur could stand. On this dreary, rainy day, to see his breakfast being eaten by somebody else. He knew Templeton was getting soaked out there in the pouring rain, but even that didn't comfort him. Friendless, dejected, and hungry, he threw himself down in the manure and sobbed. Late that afternoon, Lurvy went to Mr. Zuckerman. I think there's something wrong with that pig of yours. He hasn't touched his food. Give him 2 spoonfuls of sulfur and a little molasses, said Mr. Zuckerman. Wilbur couldn't believe what was happening to him when Lurvy caught him and forced the medicine down his throat. This was certainly the worst day of his life. He didn't know whether he could endure the awful loneliness anymore. Darkness settled over everything. Soon there were only shadows and no noises of the sheep chewing their cuds, and occasionally the rattle of a cow chain up overhead. You can imagine Wilbur's surprise when out of the darkness came a small voice he had never heard before. It sounded rather thin but pleasant. Do you want a friend? Wilbur, it said, I'll be a friend to you. I have watched you all day and I liked you. I like you, but I can't see you, said Wilbur, jumping to his feet. Where are you? And who are you? Right up here, said the voice. Go to sleep. You'll see me in the morning. Chapter 5. Charlotte. Night seemed long. Wilbur's stomach was empty, and his mind was full. And when your stomach is empty and your mind is full, it's always hard to sleep. A dozen times during the night, Wilbur woke and stared into the blackness, listening to the sounds and trying to figure out what time it was. Barney is never perfectly quiet. Even at midnight, there is usually something stirring. The first time he awoke, he heard Templeton gnawing a hole in the grain bin. Templeton's teeth scraped loudly against the wood and made quite a racket. That crazy rat, thought Wilbur. Why does he have to stay up all night, grinding his clashers and destroying people's property? Why can't he go to sleep like any decent animal? Second time Wilbur awoke, he heard the goose turning on her nest and chuckling to herself. What time is it? Whispered Wilbur to the goose. Probably, about 11:30, said the goose. Why aren't you asleep, Wilbur? Too many things on my mind, said Wilbur. Well, said the goose, that's not my trouble. I have nothing at all on my mind, but I have too many things under my behind. Have you ever tried to sleep while sitting on 8 legs? No, replied Wilbur. I suppose it is uncomfortable. How long does it take a goose egg to hatch? Approximately 30 days, all told, answered the goose. But I cheat a little. On warm afternoon, I just pull a little straw over the eggs and go out for a walk. Wilbur yawned and went back to sleep. In his dreams, he heard again the voice saying, I'll be a friend to you. Go to sleep. You will see me in the morning. About half an hour before dawn, Wilbur woke and listened. The barn was still quiet, dark. The sheep lay motionless. Even the goose was quiet. Overhead, on the main floor, nothing stirred. The cows were resting. Horses dozed. Templeton had quit work and gone off somewhere on an errand. The only sound was a slight scraping noise from the rooftop, where the weather vane swung back and forth. Wilbur loved the barn when it was like this, calm and quiet, waiting for light. Day is almost here, he thought. Through a small window, a faint gleam appeared. One by one, the stars went out. Wilbur could see the goose for a few feet away. She sat with head tucked under a wing. Then he could see the sheep and the lambs. The sky lightened. Oh, beautiful day. It is here at last. Today I shall find my friend. Wilbur looked everywhere. He searched his pen thoroughly. He examined the window ledge, stared up at the ceiling. But he saw nothing new. Finally, he decided he would have to speak up. He hated to break the lovely stillness of dawn by using his voice, but he couldn't think of any other way to locate the mysterious new friend who was nowhere to be seen. So Wilbur cleared his throat. Attention, please, he said in a loud, firm voice. Will the party who addressed me at the bedtime last night kindly make himself or herself known by giving an appropriate sign or signal? Wilbur paused. And listened. All the other animals lifted their heads and stared at him. Wilbur blushed, but he was determined to get in touch with his unknown friend. Attention please, he said. I will repeat the message. Will the party who addressed me at bedtime last night kindly speak up? Please tell me where you are if you are my friend. The sheep looked at each other in disgust. Stop your nonsense, Wilbur, said the other sheep. If you have a new friend here, you're probably disturbing his rest. And the quickest way to spoil a friendship is to wake somebody up in the morning before he is ready. How can you be sure your friend is an early riser? I beg everyone's pardon, whispered Wilbur. I didn't mean to be objectionable. He lay down meekly in the manure, facing the door. He did not know it, but his friend was very near, and the old sheep was right. The friend was still asleep. Soon Lurby appeared with slops for breakfast. Wilbur rushed out, ate everything in a hurry, and licked the trough. The sheep moved off down the lane. The gander waddled along behind them, pulling grass. And then, just as Wilbur was settling down for his morning nap, he heard again the thin voice that had addressed him the night before. Salutation, said the voice. Wilbur jumped to his feet. What? Salutation, repeated the voice. What a day, and where are you? Screamed Wilbur. Please tell me where you are and what a salutation. Salutations are greetings, said the voice. When I say salutation, it's just my fancy way of saying hello or good morning. Actually, it's a silly expression. I'm surprised that I used it at all. As for my whereabouts, that's easy. Look up here in the corner of the doorway. Here I am. Look, I am waving. At last, Wilbur saw the creature that had spoken to him in such a kindly way. Stretched across the upper part of the doorway was a big spider web. Hanging from the top of the web and head down was a large gray spider. She was about the size of a gumdrop. She had 8 legs, and she was waving one of them at Wilbur in friendly greeting. See me now? She asked. Oh, yes, indeed. Said Wilbur. Yes, indeed. How are you? Good morning, salutation. Very pleased to meet you. What's your name, please? May I have your name? My name, said the spider, is Charlotte. Charlotte what? Charlotte A. Cabatica. But just call me Charlotte. Charlotte what? Asked Wilbur eagerly. Charlotte A. Cabatica, but just call me Charlotte. I think you're beautiful, said Wilbur. Well, I'm pretty, replied Charlotte. There is no denying that. Almost all spiders are rather nice looking. I'm not as flashy as some, but I'll do. I wish I could see you, Wilbur, as clearly as you can see me. Why can't you? I'm right here, yes, but I'm nearsighted. I have always been dreadfully nearsighted. It's good in some ways, not so good in others. Watch me wrap up this fly. A fly that had been crawling along Wilbur's trough had flown up and blundered into the low part of Charlotte's web and was tangled in the sticky thread. The fly was beating its wings furiously, trying to break loose and free itself. First, I dived at him. She plunged headfirst toward the fly. As she dropped, the tiny silken thread unwound from her teeth. As she dropped a tiny silken, next I wrapped him up, she grabbed the fly, threw a few jets of silk around it, and rolled it over and over, wrapping it so that it couldn't move. Wilbur watched in horror. He could hardly believe what he was seeing. Although he detested flies, he was sorry for this one. There, I know him out. Oh, he'll be more comfortable. She beat the fly. He can't find the thing now, she remarked. He'll make a perfect breakfast for me. You mean you eat flies? Gasped Wilbur. Certainly, flies, bugs, grasshopper, choice beetles, moth, butterflies, tasty cockroaches, giants, magpie. Cockroaches, gnats, midges, dead longlegs, centipedes, mosquitoes, crickets, anything that's careless enough to get charged, get caught in to get in my web. I have to leave, don't I? Why, yes, of course, said Will. Do they taste good? Delicious. Of course, I don't really eat. I drink the blood and I love blood, said Charlotte. And her pleasant, thin voice grew even thinner and more pleasant. Don't say that, groaned Wilbur. Please don't say things like that. Why not? It is true, and I have to say what is true. I am not entirely happy about my diet of flies and bugs, but it's the way I'm made. Spider has to pick up a living something somehow. Other than I happen to be a trapper. I just naturally build a web and trap flies and other insects. My mother was a trapper before me. Her mother was a trapper before her. Thousands of years, we spiders have been laying for flies and eggs. But it's a miserable inheritance, said Wilbur. Gloomily, he was sad because his new friend was so bloodthirsty. Yes, it is, agreed Charlotte, but I can't help it. I don't know how the first spider in the early days of the world happened to think of this fancy idea of spinning a web, but she did. And it was clever of her, too. And since then, all of us spiders have had to work the same trick. It's not a bad pitch? Well, sure. It's cruel. Who did not intend to be argued out of happiness? His possession. He argued with his position. Well, you can't talk, said Charlotte. You can't talk, said Charlotte. You have your meals brought to you in a pail. Nobody feeds me. I have to get my own living. I live by wits. I have to be sharp and clever, lest I go hungry. I have to think things out, catch what I can, take what comes. It just so happens, my friend, that when it comes to flies and insects and bugs. Furthermore, said Charlotte, shaking one of her legs, do you realize that if I didn't catch bugs and eat them, the bugs would increase and multiply and get so numerous that they would destroy the earth, wipe out everything. Really? I wouldn't want that to happen. Perhaps your web is a good thing after all. The goose had been listening to this conversation and chuckling to herself. There are a lot of things Wilbur doesn't know about life. He's really a very innocent little pig. He doesn't even know what's going to happen to him around Christmas time. He has no idea that Mr. Zuckerman and Lord are plotting to kill him, and the goose raised herself a bit and poked her eggs a little further under her so that they would receive the full heat from her warm body and soft feathers. Charlotte stood quietly over the fly, preparing to eat it. Wilder lay down and closed his eye. He was tired from his wakeful night and from the excitement of meeting someone for the first time. A breeze brought him the smell of clover. Sweet-smelling words beyond his fence. Well, I've got a new friend at all right, but what a gamble friendship is. Charlotte is fierce, brutal, scheming, bloodthirsty, everything I don't like. How can I learn to like her? Even though she's pretty and of course clever, Wilbur was merely suffering the doubts and fears that often go with finding a new friend. In good time, he was to discover that he was mistaken about Charlotte. Underneath a rather bold and cruel exterior, she had a kind heart, and she was to prove loyal and true to the very end. The end.